What's up, everybody? I'm Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Happy holidays. Hope you're feeling festive. Clearly I am. I'm just selling out at this point. I have on a fun hat. The fun hat is because we're going to talk about the holidays today. Holidays are coming up, and I think it's a topic that comes up pretty regularly. I'm seeing a lot of blog posts by different people. I wrote one already. I'm seeing a lot of news articles and a lot of different stuff on dealing with your family during the holidays. So, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, I thought I would chime in. I also, whenever I do my blog, I'm kind of primed to write short stuff so that it's not too terrible to read, and then I always remember stuff like a day later that I didn't talk about. So, a lot of the stuff that I'm blogging about, then I kind of feel like doing a video because I can extrapolate on some things. The hat is not staying because it's 1,000 degrees in my office. My last clients of the day will understand that because they are heat gets trapped in my office. So, and that hat's genuinely warm, you know. Little Packers hat. We like to think that these are just fun festive hats, but that's warm. That part's blistering hot. Also, probably way too much green in the video, which I'm aware could be a festive thing. But green shirt, Merry Krampus, green background, green hat, all different color greens. Not a great look. I'm a little colorblind, but even I know that's too many greens in one. So yeah, let's talk holidays and not just decoration schemes, because that's a topic I'm not an expert on. Holidays can be really stressful. I think it's a great time for a lot of different reasons. I think there's time to kind of rest and recuperate. I think there's time to get in touch with nature. I think there's time to get in touch with our family. And that tends to be the stressful part of the season. So there's a lot that goes into it societally. Obviously, I'm speaking to people from the United States here. There's a commercialism involved in Christmas. There's supposed to be a meaning to the season. I was raised Christian, so that was a phrase that got said all the time. But it's nonsensical, and there's a bunch of cognitive dissonance too. And building a case against the holidays instead of talking how to work through it here. Let's start with consumerism and commercialism. At this point, it's Christmas is almost a Hallmark holiday. I would say it's not quite as bad as not Halloween. Valentine's Day. I'm going through all my holidays right now in my head. Valentine's to me is the quintessential, and maybe now Sweetest Day, which I never remember when it is because it's purely made up. But Valentine's Day as a Hallmark holiday, it has no actual meaning other than certain companies and restaurants charge more. Christmas is kind of becoming that too. There's a lot of ideas around consumerism. I mean, I grew up I was born in the late 80s, but I grew up in the 90s. You know, all the Christmas movies are about getting to a mall and getting the last toy, or child abandonment, Home Alone. So, you know, it's kind of been built in, and I think with pop culture, it's been built in for a long time now, that consumerism nature. And like, when's the last time people have been to a mall? Maybe people go to malls still, but in this area in the Midwest, it's not a super popular thing. So yeah, it's kind of weird to think like, oh, Christmas is Christmas shopping. Like, I don't know. So I think for a lot of people that's disingenuous. I talk about congruence, where our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors are all aligned with our belief system. So already we're kind of dealing with some problems of belief system. If you think the holidays are about connection and about family and about giving, that's one thing. If it's then consumerism, so you might be kind of struggling just managing that stress. And so that's a thing to think about and kind of look at. I think making personal gifts or regifting things, crafting or creating things. I have little kids, so I'm biased a little bit in this, but in prepping for some of these giving type holidays, it's been more about connection in doing things and creating things, connecting with nature. So I think learning how to kind of tap into some of those things and finding what works for you. If Christmas shopping stresses you out, well, then it's time to reevaluate that as part of your ritual for the holiday season, as opposed to just doing what you're supposed to do. But I think the larger stressor overall is one of time commitments with family, and that's really where my expertise comes in. Family of origin tends to be one of the more stressful things that people deal with. It's what a lot of my clients talk about. It's what I end up talking about with my clients a lot. Getting together with family of origin always sounds like a good idea for those of us who have fond memories with our families of origin, but there's always inherent stress involved with it. So as adults, part of our proper growth and development is to individuate. We go through this process. Typically, for most of us, it's after high school. It starts in late high school. It's why at 17, 18, we're ready to move out. We're ready to leave, and for the most part, we've been annoying enough where our parents are ready to get us out too. So that's part of individuation, and individuation happens over a couple of years. So there's growth and development that happens between 14 and 18, and that development slows for most people, but it doesn't stop until around 25, 26. And then, fun fact, our brain just starts deteriorating. So rock on. So we individuate, and then what happens is, as we go back towards our family of origin, we're different than when we left, and that's good, and that's healthy, and that's what is supposed to happen. That's healthy development. But our family of origin isn't always there for that. Most of us leave for that process. It is easier to individuate when we're out on our own. And so we've left for this process, and now we're coming back, maybe with a partner, maybe not. And we're different. And our family of origin kind of doesn't accept that. And it's often not malicious. Sometimes it is. If our partner has green hair, or they're the wrong gender or wrong sexuality or whatever, our family's going to recoil against that. And I'm speaking colloquially there. Obviously, I don't agree or support with families acting that way. Dye with your hair whatever color you want. Date and marry whoever you want. I got you. But our family doesn't always have you. And so that's one of the things that we struggle with, is this individuation happens, and then our family doesn't know how to deal with it. And when we think in family systems term, our family of origin is an ecosystem. And so that ecosystem is driven towards homeostasis. Change can happen, but change is slow and over time. It's not immediate. And the ecosystem has to adjust. And so all these different moving parts, all these different members of the family, if we introduce a new thing in a food chain, the food chain has to adjust over time. It's not an immediate thing. And so in the same way that ecosystems can change over time, but they're driven towards homeostasis, our family of origin is kind of the same thing. Now, our family is not a mindless ecosystem. Every person in it has their minds and is ideally a somewhat rational, cognitive being. And so people have their biases, they have their hangups, they have their own baggage that comes with it. And so why holidays tend to be so stressful is because we get too many members of our family of origin together. We have too much of an ecosystem together, and then that ecosystem wants its particular homeostasis to exist. And so I'll talk about it with families where there's a tipping point. And most people get it right away when I'm talking about this concept of tipping point with the family. If you have too many family members together, it gets worse. And there's a tipping point that happens. So in my wife's family, we had this, there was a rule of 3 joke, I think is still in effect. We're maybe better at managing it now as we've gotten older. But the idea that any 3 members of our family of origin that got together, someone was going to cry. 2 members, fine, didn't matter what members, could be anybody, could get together and it'd be good. 3 members get together, someone's going to cry. It's just the way it was. But I think it still has a 100% success rate. So my wife's family uses humor as a coping mechanism, and so joke about it pretty frequently. My family is very German and stoic, so just prefers not to deal with any problems. So there are a bunch of problems that are unresolved. And so different families deal with it differently. I'm super close with my brother. If I get together with my brother, no problem. If I get together with my brother and maybe my parents are around, might be okay with 3 of us. If there's 4 of us, we might be at that tipping point. And some family members are a little bit more chaotic than others, so your tipping point might be different depending on which family members are around. But most of us, there's a point where it's okay to see our family of origin, and then there becomes too many people where that old pattern, that old ecosystem tries to exert its dominance over the other smaller ecosystems. And so if you're married, let's say you have kids and you've individuated and you built your family, you have this ecosystem, and your sibling comes in with their ecosystem, and then your parents are coming in, and so the people who are biologically related are in an ecosystem. You have all these kind of conflicting expectations, and things aren't super clear, and most families are not savvy enough emotionally or skilled in their communication enough to set healthy boundaries and create expectations that are realistic. And so what I always work with my clients is your family of choice, the people who are in your immediate family, partners, kids who are yours, that family, that tiny ecosystem has to be where you start. That's what you can control. That's where you set your expectations, and everything after that is the next level out of importance. And that's kind of the way that you have to prioritize. But unfortunately, what happens when we're not intentional with it is the largest ecosystem, which is then the family of origin, typically is the one that people prioritize. And again, it's often mindless, not malicious. If we're dealing with some pretty strong family dynamics or toxic families with really rigid boundaries, or families with there's a lot of things that can go wrong in family of origins that can kind of drag in. So there are some factors that can affect that, but oftentimes it's that family of origin. Whoever's family of origin is going to be around, where there are the most family members from that family, is the one that kind of gets prioritized. Sometimes the older generation tries to prioritize their ideas about things, and they think we're the parents, so we're in charge. But when you're in your 60s and your kids are in their 30s, like, parents as a concept isn't as important or meaningful anymore. And that's a bias a little bit in American culture, right? We don't have that culture that has a way to gracefully honor and respect the older generations while still allowing the younger generations to grow. It's just kind of every generation thinks these young punks are the worst. So when we get a bunch of different family generations together too, it can be tricky. But oftentimes the dynamic is parents are trying to exert that old homeostasis from the family of origin ecosystem onto their kids, even when the kids are grown and they're adults. So you kind of have to control your own ecosystem. You have to start with what's going on for you and your immediate family. That's what you prioritize. Whether you agree with it or not, like, that's honestly the only thing that works. So I work with a lot of couples who are like, wow, my family's crazy, so I'm just going to go along with it. My partner, like, I talked to them about it, so they get it, and it's cool. And, like, it's not cool. It doesn't work that way. You have to prioritize your family, your immediate family, the family that you chose and created and are nurturing and growing, not your family of origin. And that can be really hard because that ecosystem in the family of origin might not have, like, allowed in your partner, or they might have allowed your partner in, but it's still kind of weird or whatever. So, like, getting people to feel meshed, and not in a healthy way. Enmeshment often in family systems terms is unhealthy. That's a family that's too much in their own business. But getting in-laws and partners that are marrying in to feel part of the family is really difficult. So most families don't navigate that part very well, which is then leaves partners who married into the family feeling excluded. And sometimes that becomes its own ecosystem too, right? So if you're a partner, if you're relating to what I'm saying, you and the other in-laws might kind of gather and commiserate about how you're all outsiders. Or the person that you married is together with their siblings and they're off doing their own sibling thing and you're kind of excluded, and that's kind of the way it goes. So that's where it breaks down, and that's where it goes poorly, when we don't prioritize our smaller family units, the family that we chose, the family that we're prioritizing. So that's kind of what we have to start with. That will help alleviate a lot of the problems, because when you get together with your family of origin for the holidays and then you go back home, and when you go back home and you spend your days with your partner or your spouse or whatever the case may be, and your kids, without that other family of origin around, that's who you live with on a daily basis. Like, that's the family you've created and you've chosen, not the family that you by chance were born into. And so because you live with them on a daily basis and you deal with them and they're a bigger part of your life, like, that's why we have to prioritize it. And that's why I say, like, even if you don't agree, that is the only thing that's going to work, because that's just pragmatic. Like, that's the family that you spend the most time with. So that's the family that you have to prioritize. Family of origin's weird because there's often a lot of, like, unspoken expectations, and so there'll be guilt and there'll be shame and there'll be passive aggressive stuff. Hopefully not aggressive stuff. If your family's being aggressive, just leave. Violence is not tolerable. Just leave. That's not okay. It's never okay. There's not a justification for it that makes it okay. So usually it's not rising to aggression. It's usually passive aggressive snide comments, gossiping about people behind people's backs, etc. And that stuff's all unhealthy. That shows a family system that's not willing to grow and adapt and nurture healthy growth and development over the course of a lifetime. That's a family that's stuck in its ways for either poor reasons or for personal reasons that they're maybe not even aware of. So if we kind of know some of these things, if we know, a grandparent's racist, or, somebody's been watching too much Fox News and they're down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, or, they're a big fan of Kanye and haven't been able to write him off yet, whatever the case may be. They're convinced that critical race theory is being taught in kindergartens, whatever culture war is being fought and they're on the wrong side of. if we know we're kind of going to have to deal with these things, it's best to plan for that. So fingers crossed, hope it doesn't come up, usually isn't a successful plan. The way that I tell people to build healthy expectations or realistic expectations is we have to plan for the worst. We also have to hope for the best, so we can't just be doom and gloom about things. We also have to balance some healthy, what is the ideal version, because then we can push behaviors towards that ideal version so we have a better outcome. So we need to know what the worst is, and we need to have a plan for it. Your brain will panic in the moment and not come up with something. So have your fire escape route, have your plan for the worst, have your hope for the best, figure out what that looks like and how it can work. And somewhere in the middle is typically what happens, right? So the way that your brain kind of can go doom and gloom and worst case scenario usually isn't what happens. That's not the most realistic outcome. And very few of us experience best case scenario often either. And so those are kind of extremes. Somewhere in the middle is typically what happens. That's just statistics. But deconstructing some of those things a little bit further, I talk about like having a safety plan. Obviously for physical safety, but emotional safety too. So when things get heightened, like take the dog for a walk, let the kids go outside and play, go to the park you grew up nearby when you were a kid, or go down to the lake or whatever. So around my family of origin, my grandparents have a cabin on a lake, which sounds very nice and idyllic, but it can be kind of stressful. It's very small. At this point, my grandparents are old, and so it's always like 80 degrees. I'm not exaggerating, 80 degrees in there. To kind of have to have plans to take breaks and get out. But they live near a lake, and so it's their property's on the creek, so they have water access. I always said crick growing up, which might be like a Midwestern thing. I've used crick and creek interchangeably. I think crick is wrong. Anyway, so you can walk down the road and go through the park to get to the actual lake, or you can take the water on the crick. You can go down the creek if you have water access, or like it's winter and it's frozen. You can kind of go exploring through the woods there. But I've always had that safety plan, even before I did therapy and kind of formalized some of these things into a process. It was just a thing that was necessary. So I think it's one of those things where having that escape plan is nice. Pets are great. Kids are great. Pets and kids are great because people, especially the older generation, have a lot of instant goodwill for them. And so they don't get pulled up in the family of origin dynamics. And so, you don't want to fight in front of the kids, or the kids need to go, as my grandma would say, get the stink off them by playing outside. Whatever it is, you can kind of build some of those escape plans to relieve some pressure, to stress relieve yourself, to give yourself some time to breathe. Those things are really great. I think also having expectations around like what you're doing and why. So if like there's a lot of pressure just to get together for the holidays, and you're supposed to do like overnight, or you're supposed to do Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, or whatever the case may be, is that realistic? Does that make sense? Is that what you want to be doing? And again, you can only control yourself. So prioritizing kind of the aspect of you can control what you can control your controllables, one of my many mantras. Starting from there is like, is this the thing that I want to do? Is this the thing that I feel like I have to do, or I'm expected to do, but I don't really want to? And so kind of looking at some of these things, figuring out like what you want to do with the holidays, what you want to get out of these family interactions, and planning for that. So maybe you want to see everybody, it's nice, you want to do a meal, and then you want to leave. And like that might ruffle some feathers, or that might bother people. But if you stay too late into the evening, the expectation is that you stay the whole night, or that's when fights happen, that's when politics come up, or whatever comes up. People start complaining that you have tattoos or piercings or whatever. I don't know your family. So kind of knowing how to avoid some of those things. If you're at a point where you're like, I don't want to deal with it, or I'm not in a place where I can deal with it, then being okay saying like, yeah, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to leave, or I'm only going to go for part of the day, or I'm only going to go for a meal. I'm going to pop in for 30 minutes to say hi to everybody, and then I'm going to get together later with the siblings that I'm close to, or the cousins that I'm close to, or whatever. I'm going to see the people that I want to see, but in a way that makes sense and is healthy and safe for me. And that too, if you have a family, if you've got kids, is nice for them to kind of experience family as like a healthy thing, instead of being this generational thing of unhealthy boundaries, bad boundaries, toxic behaviors, all that stuff. We don't want to normalize that. There's no reason that we need to carry that into the next generation. So having some good boundaries for stuff like that. And if you struggle with boundaries, as most people do, thinking about what you want that next generation to be taught, that next generation to be learning is okay, is a helpful way to kind of frame what you want to tolerate and not tolerate, because it kind of takes you out of that guilt and shame cycle that comes with a lot of the family of origin expectations. The other thing that some of the other things I talk about are general wellness things always, but specifically for the holidays, because we get out of our normal sleep schedule. Maybe we're traveling, we're shifting time zones, we're not sleeping in our own bed, we're crashing on a couch, whatever the case may be. We're staying up late to party, celebrate, play games. Whatever it is, we get out of kind of our normal rhythm, and that creates stress. It's not stress that we are losing sleep over, unless we're staying up too late. It's not stress that like causes anxiety, but it's passive stress. It's stress that our body has to deal with. It's stress that our brain has to process. And if we're not doing stress relief, we're just accumulating stress. So again, that's where like, a whole vacation with family where we're gone, 3-4 days or more, when you're out of your routine, you're out of your normal space, that's where these blowups can start happening and things can get out of hand with family because some of the physical well-being that our body needs isn't happening. So again, that's another great way to take breaks, plan some of those things, let your body kind of ground and plan some stress relief. And that's where thinking through ahead of time and setting some intention around what you want to get out of the holiday season is really helpful. What do you enjoy? Do you like ice skating? Do you like hot chocolate? Do you like seeing your friends from high school or your friends from your hometown, whatever it is? And maybe you want to prioritize that instead of family, and your family can be all boo-hoo about it. But like, if that's what you want to do and that's what's important to you, then that's what you should kind of celebrate and honor. So I think those are some big things. I hinted at some cognitive dissonance. Christmas is a weird one because like there's a whole culture war around like saying Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas or whatever. Or like I don't even know what Starbucks writes on cups is offensive to one or the other. I don't know. It's bizarre because like Christmas has nothing to do with Jesus because that's not when he would have been born if the Bible is historically accurate, which we know it's not. Breezing by that one. So yeah, like Christmas has always been a pagan holiday. The Christians co-opted it for a while for political reasons to kind of force paganism and Christianity together for a while. It's a fun story about history. So like there's some cognitive dissonance around that, and like Jesus is the reason for the season. Like, no, he's not. It has nothing to do with it. It's a pagan holiday. It always has been. It's winter solstice. It's the Yuletide holiday. And again, for a lot of people, like maybe you're Christmas, Easter Catholic, or you celebrate some of the holidays are religious, but you're not particularly religious anymore. Like that can cause a lot of dissonance. And so again, like being real with yourself about like, what's the point? Why are you doing some of these things? You're doing it because it's expectations or because you want to. Winter's great. I grew up in Wisconsin. I still live in Wisconsin. It can be really cold and miserable sometimes, but there's a lot that comes with snow and the season that's really fun, and connecting with nature can be really great, and going ice skating is great, and snowmobiling and snowshoeing and blah, 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 blah. There's all this great stuff. Like if you can get out at night when it's snowing and be out in the woods, like that's awesome. So again, figuring out what is important about the season. If it's not if the things aren't congruent for you in what your meaning is or your belief system is, and you're kind of like going through the motions, that's probably creating some passive stress as well. And we can deal with passive stress either by doing stress relief to deal with it, or by not engaging it in the first place. So setting some intentions around what's the point of the season, why are you doing the things that you're doing, and trying to engage with it so that you're getting something positive out of it. Also puts your brain and your body in a healthier space to get positive results out of some of these potentially stressful gatherings that go along with it. So questions, concerns, hit me up. You can find me on my website, wellnesswithjared.com. I wrote a blog. It's just my website. There's a link for the blog, or wellnesswithjared.com/blog. I wrote about holiday stress already, so you can check that out, or drop down in the comments and ask me questions. I check this stuff regularly, so can respond there. All right, peace. Happy holidays, everyone.